From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
We are here tonight not to give our opinion. We are here as revolutionaries. He has to go. We are completing the January 25th revolution until Dr. Morsy leaves. Muslims and Christians, the people of Alexandria, are all calling on Dr. Morsy to leave.
Millions of protesters filled the streets of Egypt calling for the resignation of President Mohamed Morsy in the largest protest since the 2011 revolution that ousted Hosni Mubarak. We'll go to Cairo for a report from Democracy Now!'s Sharif Abdel-Qaddous. Then, as President Obama arrives in Tanzania on the last leg of his African tour, we look at U.S. secret operations in North Africa.
The United States condemns in the strongest terms this outrageous and shocking attack. We're working with the government of Libya to secure our diplomats. I've also directed my administration to increase our security at diplomatic posts around the world. And make no mistake, we will work with the Libyan government to bring to justice the killers who attacked our people.
A new book on last year's Benghazi attack in Libya concludes the killing of U.S. Ambassador Christopher Stevens and 3 others was largely blowback for a secret assassination operation run in North Africa by Joint Special Operations Command and John Brennan, President Obama's then counterterrorism advisor, now director of the CIA. We'll speak with the book's authors, Brandon Webb and Jack Murphy, both veterans of U.S. Special Operations. Last week, they published the contents of Ambassador Stevens' diary from the days before the Benghazi attack. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Millions of people have rallied across Egypt calling for the ouster of President Mohamed Morsy 1 year after his inauguration. Sunday's protests sparked clashes that left at least 16 people dead and nearly 800 injured. Among those killed in previous days of unrest was Andrew Proctor, a 21-year-old Kenyan college student from Chevy Chase, Maryland. Anti-government demonstrators reportedly ransacked the Muslim Brotherhood headquarters in Cairo and set it ablaze. The Egyptian government says up to 17 million people turned out nationwide. Tens of thousands remain in Cairo's Tahrir Square and outside the presidential palace, vowing to stay until Morsy steps down. We'll have more from Egypt with Democracy Now!'s Sharif Abdel-Qaddous after headlines. The latest revelations from whistleblower Edward Snowden are threatening a major rift between the U.S. and the European Union. Citing documents released by Snowden, the German magazine Der Spiegel reports the National Security Agency spied on European Union offices in Brussels, Washington, and the United Nations. The NSA allegedly planted bugs to listen in on conversations and phone calls and also hacked into the EU computer network to access emails. According to The Guardian, one NSA document lists 38 embassies and missions as targets, including not just the EU, but also countries such as Japan, Mexico, South Korea, India, and Turkey. The revelations come just as the U.S. and EU are preparing to negotiate a transatlantic trade deal. On Sunday, the president of the European Parliament, Martin Schulz, called on the U.S. to explain the latest spying claims.
I feel treated as a European and representative of a European institution like the representative of an enemy. Is this the basis for a constructive relationship on the basis of mutual trust? I think no. And therefore my first request to the embassy of the United States here in Brussels is it true? And in case it is true, why? They should justify. It is shocking that the United States take measures against their most important and nearest allies, comparable to measures taken in the past by the KGB, by the Secret Service of the Soviet Union.
The latest documents also point to a major NSA spy operation targeting European citizens. According to Der Spiegel, some 500 million unique communications are monitored in Germany alone each month. The revelations have sparked calls from some European diplomats to suspend trade talks, as well as the sharing of information on bank transactions and flight passengers. The New York Times reports Edward Snowden likely obtained access to the U.S. target list because his job for the contractor, Booz Allen Hamilton, was to help the NSA break into internet and telephone communications worldwide. Edward Snowden's believed to remain in a transit area of a Moscow airport 1 week after leaving Hong Kong. On Saturday, Ecuadorian President Rafael Correa said Vice President Joe Biden called him to urge a rejection of Snowden's asylum bid.
What a difference between Vice President Biden and those poorly raised congressmen and senators threatening the country. It was a very friendly, even cordial conversation. Of course, we discussed the topic of Snowden, for which he communicated a very courteous request from the United States that we reject asylum. I told him what the Ecuadorian position is. Vice President, thank you for your call. We very much appreciate the United States. We have not gone in search of this situation. We are not anti-U.S., which is what certain negative-thinking members of the media have said.
On Sunday, President Correa followed up by saying Russia's now in control of Snowden's fate. Despite rumors his government issued Snowden a special travel document, Correa says his government cannot process Snowden's asylum bid until he reaches Ecuador or one of its embassies. In a public message to Snowden, Correa also urged the whistleblower to, quote, keep your spirits high, adding, quote, knowing that you acted in accord with your conscience can give you peace. Speaking to ABC News, WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange criticized the U.S. for revoking Snowden's passport, but said no amount of government pressure can stop the publication of his leaks.
No stopping the publishing process at this stage. Great care has been taken to make sure that Mr. Snowden can't be pressured by any state to stop the publication process. I mean, the United States, by cancelling his passport, has left him for the moment marooned in Russia. Is that really a great outcome by the State Department? Is that really what it wanted to do? I think that's every citizen has the right to their citizenship. To take someone's principal component of citizenship, their passport, away from them is a disgrace.
Edward Snowden's surveillance leaks were first published by The Guardian. The Pentagon's now confirmed it's blocking access to The Guardian website at U.S. military facilities around the world. The ban apparently covers Guardian articles related to NSA surveillance, not the entire website as a whole. It also extends to other news websites that report The Guardian's revelations. Same-sex marriages have resumed in California following last week's Supreme Court decision allowing them to go forward. Ceremonies had been expected to resume in a few weeks, but on Friday, a federal appeals court lifted the ban earlier than expected. That prompted a wave of couples to exchange vows across the state for the first gay marriages there in 5 years. They included Paul Katami and Jeff Cirillo, who were among the plaintiffs in the Supreme Court case challenging California's ban on same-sex marriage. Proposition 8. After their marriage at Los Angeles City Hall, Cirillo hailed what he called a victory on the path to equality.
People ask us all the time, you know, did you have any second thoughts? Did you always want to do this when you had the opportunity? And we've always said, how could you not? The opportunity to right a wrong was there. And, you know, when we leave this earth, people will say that Paul and Jeff and Chris and Sandy and so many others like us did not stand for being treated as second-class citizens. And I hope we did a little bit to change the path towards equality.
Opponents of same-sex marriage asked the Supreme Court to halt California's resumption of same-sex weddings over the weekend, but their request was denied. The resumption of same-sex marriage in California came just in time for gay pride celebrations this weekend across the country. Last week also saw the Supreme Court strike down the Defense of Marriage Act, or DOMA, which barred federal recognition of same-sex couples. On Friday, a married couple in Florida, an American and an immigrant from Bulgaria, became the first same-sex couple to be approved for a permanent green card in the aftermath of DOMA's invalidation. 19 firefighters have died in Arizona while battling a wildfire in near-record heat. The victims were trying to contain a fast-moving fire near the town of Yarnell. The National Interagency Fire Center says it's the third deadliest single wildfire incident ever in the United States and the deadliest ever in Arizona. Prescott Fire Chief Dan Frajo announced the toll.
Right now, what we do know is that 19 firefighters were killed. in what probably the worst disaster that's taken place in wildland history here in the state of Arizona. We grieve for the families, we grieve for the department, we grieve for the city. The families are in terrible shock. Fire departments are like families, and so the entire fire department, the entire area, the entire state is being devastated by the magnitude of this incident.
The wildfire comes as parts of the West grapple with triple-digit temperatures. At least one person died in Las Vegas over the weekend as the mercury hit 118 degrees Fahrenheit. At least 3 migrants trying to cross into the U.S. were found dead near Mexico's border with Arizona, likely because of the heat. President Obama's wrapped up a visit to South Africa as the country focuses on the health of ailing former President Nelson Mandela. Mandela said to remain in critical but stable condition. On Sunday, Obama unveiled a new initiative to invest in African energy called Power Africa.
We're going to start by investing $7 billion in U.S. government resources. We're going to partner with the private sector, who themselves have committed more than $9 billion in investment. And in partnership with African nations, we're going to develop new sources of energy. We'll reach more households, not just in cities, but in villages and on farms. We'll expand access for those who live currently off the power grid. And we'll support clean energy to protect our planet and combat climate change. So, a light where currently there's darkness.
President Obama spoke after touring Robben Island, site of the prison that held Nelson Mandela for 18 of his 27 years behind bars as leader of the anti-apartheid struggle. On Sunday, riot police fired rubber bullets to disperse a crowd protesting Obama's visit in the township of Soweto. Obama now heads to Tanzania, the last stop of his 3-nation African tour. Secretary of State John Kerry's wrapped up a visit to Israel and the occupied territories without an agreement on resuming peace talks. Negotiations have stalled since 2010 over Israel's refusal to halt settlement construction in the occupied West Bank. As he left Israel, Kerry claimed he had made progress in bridging gaps between the two sides.
Pleased to tell you that we have made real progress on this trip, and I believe that with a little more work, the start of final status negotiations could be within reach. We started out with very wide gaps, and we have narrowed those considerably.
Israel announced the construction of dozens of settlement homes in East Jerusalem last week, just before Kerry arrived. Ohio Governor John Kasich has signed into law a new budget that includes some of the harshest anti-abortion measures in the country. The bill's provisions would effectively defund Planned Parenthood, shift funds to deceptive crisis pregnancy centers, impose restrictions that could shut down clinics, and require providers to detect any fetal heartbeat and then tell the patient about it before an abortion. Kasich chose not to reject any of them with a line-item veto. Pro-choice advocates say 3 abortion clinics will likely be forced to close. Thousands of people are expected to return to the Texas state capitol in Austin today as Republican lawmakers revive an anti-abortion measure thwarted last week. Texas Governor Rick Perry has called a second special legislative session after State Senator Wendy Davis and a people's filibuster stopped a bill to close most of the state's abortion clinics and ban abortions after 20 weeks. Speaking to NBC's Meet the Press, State Senator Davis vowed to continue the fight again today.
What we saw in the Capitol last week really was people who have grown weary of our politicians trying to boost their own political careers on the backs of women by bullying them and others, honestly, in order to promote agendas that help them personally. These are matters of personal liberty. In Texas, we hold very dear to intrusions against our personal liberty. We fight very hard against that, and we will fight as we begin the session again on Monday.
More than 5,000 people have signed up for a Stand With Texas Women demonstration to be held on the Capitol steps. A federal judge, meanwhile, has temporarily blocked an Alabama law that stood to shut down most of the state's abortion clinics. The measure forces doctors at the state's 5 clinics to obtain admitting privileges at a local hospital, a step that can be impossible in part because some hospitals oppose abortion. On Friday, the law was put on hold pending a final ruling in a lawsuit brought by Planned Parenthood and the American Civil Liberties Union. A similar law in Mississippi was blocked earlier this year. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
And I'm Nermeen Sheikh. Welcome to our listeners and viewers around the country and around the world.